You will not believe the breakthroughs I've had in the spiritual path in terms of spiritual evolution and development these last few months, because I became aware of several traps, several pitfalls on the spiritual path that were hindering my development, and essentially I was spinning my wheels and getting nowhere. Once I learned these, and once I put these into practice, major breakthroughs. In this video, I'd like to share some of those with you, some of these obstacles that I've encountered and the practices that I've put in place to catapult me into higher levels of consciousness, into higher stages of development, and share those with you in this video. So before we get started, my name is Brian. I'm a lifelong journalist. I've also been on the spiritual path for many years. I've studied all the wisdom traditions of the world, and I'd like to instill that. My goal here is, a lot of us realize what's happening on Earth right now. We realize that there's an awakening cycle underway, and a lot of us are awakening to the fact that we are here to play a role in that. So with this content that I create, it's really not about me. I'm strictly doing this because I am under contract to participate, to disseminate this information that we are all one, that consciousness is fundamental, that life is a dream, we create our own realities, and that God alone is real, is what I would say. The physical universe, and a lot of people don't like me using the term God. Let's just say source consciousness, awareness. I understood in 2020, when COVID was rolled out, I was at the end of a long career as a drug addict, my second career, and I was trying to rebound into recovery. I had a spiritual awakening that awakened me to higher levels of reality. That essentially, this universe, life itself is a dream. It's a hologram. The CIA has known this. Elite rulers of this earth have known this. But this information is just now getting out to the masses, that essentially we are powerful beyond our wildest comprehension. And I'm experienced that. I've had direct experience of that. I don't fear what is happening on the world stage, because I have direct knowledge that I exist on a higher plane of reality, that there are essentially an infinite number of Earth-like planets, an infinite number of parallel realities in the multiverse. There are higher dimensions, and but it's all essentially one thing. It is all you. It is all consciousness. So when I had that awakening, what I did was I experienced a state of bliss so fulfilling, it was beyond anything I'd ever encountered. Once you've had one of these, there's no going back to business as usual, but I immediately sought out the spiritual wisdom of the East, particularly Hinduism. Now, I embrace all the world's spiritual wisdom, but I would say the highest authority on spiritual matters, what I found as a result of my investigation as an investigative journalist, was the Sanatana Dharma, the eternal way. There's always been one way back to source. Thousands of years before the time of Christ, there's always been one way back to source, but we don't need to get into that too much. While what I'd like to do is break down for you just some of the things I encountered. Since 2005, I took up a highly disciplined path of what you would even consider to be asceticism. I've done fasting, semen retention, cold exposure, breath work, yoga. I'm avid into meditation. But truly the one thing that triggered the awakening, and I would actually call it an activation, the one thing that triggered the activation that still sustains me now, was a deep, heartfelt seeking of the will of the one, of asking, who am I? Why am I here? And what is my purpose? Asking these questions sincerely on a multiple day timeline of like, why am I here? It was a miracle that I was even still alive, considering all that I had survived through drug and alcohol addiction, of destroying my career as a journalism. But this intense seeking triggered an activation, a Kundalini awakening. And immediately I knew that I actually came here, like maybe you, if you're watching this, a lot of people actually came here to participate in this. We're all one, we're all in this together. So what I aim to do with this content, and why I'm creating it, is to help inform and disseminate information. One of the things I countered almost immediately was what seers throughout the ages have described as the false light. And this is higher dimensional beings, both good and evil, who have their own agenda, who essentially manipulate us. What I would say is that my experience was this, is that once you start delving into these higher states of evolution, you're essentially tested. I had to cultivate higher levels of discernment to realize that my thoughts aren't my own, and that I was getting impulses from the good and the bad, directing me towards actions, some of which did not produce a favorable outcome. And so the false light is also the understanding is that as I did evolve, it was supernatural things would start happening. And one of the things the false light does is it'll try to run you back into your religion. It'll chase you back into your religion, and it'll stop once you ran back into your religion, because this is a barrier. This is a higher dimension above us, and only the worthy souls are able to cross the threshold into higher states of consciousness. So what I realize is that we're always being influenced by higher dimensional beings. They are us, but by seeking the will of the one, renouncing the false light, and striving towards evolution and development, we're able to break through that barrier of the false light. Another huge trap was perfectionism. The idea that enlightenment or higher states of consciousness is something that I had to attain. And as someone who has worked out, I'm in phenomenal shape, has an incredible diet, I eat very clean, perfectionism became a trap because we are already whole and divine. Enlightenment and higher levels of evolution are not a badge for the ego. In fact, it is an undoing of the ego, an unraveling. And to do that, we need conscious contact, seeking conscious contact with our higher selves to help us dismantle this fictitious identity that we were given at birth. There's a saying, at birth we're given a name, social security number, a religion, a nationality, and we spend the rest of our lives defending a fictitious identity, and that's the case. It's that you aren't the individual. I'm not the individual. Consciousness alone, the formless ground of all being, is the only thing that's real here. And if you doubt that, just wait until you die, because you will realize it then. Pure consciousness is the ever-present witness of the rise and fall of all beings. So without getting into that much more, the main thing I would emphasize there is that this is not a self-improvement. I mean, that's great, self-improvement. What we put out into the universe comes back to us. That's why I'm putting this out. But ultimately, enlightenment isn't a badge of specialness for the ego. It does not make the ego unique. And so perfectionism needs to be identified and renounced. That you are already whole, perfect, and divine. You aren't this. This isn't real. So that also kind of dubs in with one of the other areas, and that was the spiritual ego, which is the most insidious. The more insidious ego is that we can evolve. And one of the things that I've had to watch, and I've seen a lot of people on the world stage, is that we develop ourselves and we evolve. And one of the impulses of the spiritual ego is to immediately put out a shingle and say, I'm enlightened, come to me, I will teach you, and gather around their little, there'll be the guru and all these little disciples, when enlightenment is actually understanding that there are no others. These are all you. So you're more interested in empowering people. And any teacher, which the spiritual path has put teachers in front of me who are trying to use their enlightenment for financial profit. No enlightened being has interest in turning this into a capitalist venture or making money. Sure, we all do need to eat, but a lot of the more evolved beings that I've encountered as a result of going against the grain and saying, no, this place is making a lot of money, they've got all these disciples. The universe has actually presented me with individuals who I've attracted into my life who are highly evolved on the spiritual path, who I would consider enlightened, but have no financial profit or motive. Guys been doing this for 20, 30 years in India who work a job as an engineer or do other things, but are not interested in using their evolution or spiritual development for financial profit. Additionally, a lot of this, you'll see it's going to be uncut, unedited. This is off the cuff. This is straight from the heart. I am really only producing and making this content because I feel the impulse from the universe saying, hey, you come a long way, but you agreed to do certain work while you're here. And I feel like there are many others who are on that path. And so that kind of brings me to my other trap, is that I have resisted using my gifts that I've always known were gifts before I even had my awakening, was resisted using my gifts to participate in this awakening in order to develop myself fully. Let me be honest with you. I create content for a living. I am a reporter. This is very draining, time-consuming. Social media is very draining. It is very hard to keep up with social media platforms and develop ourselves on the spiritual path because it's constantly requiring our attention. The blue light is unhealthy without getting into conspiracy theories. But what I'm getting at is that this is another hurdle I have encountered on the spiritual path, is just this desire to just renounce the world. And I would love to, don't get me wrong, go off and in a band somewhere, fast, meditate, do Kundalini yoga around the clock because of the high and the euphoria it produces. And I've barely begun to scratch the surface, but I can't do that because there are others, or they're not actually others, there are other aspects of me who are asleep, who are under the spell of Maya, who need your help, who need my help. And speaking our truth and walking in our truth is the most important thing we can do at this time. So that brings me to another trap, is living in untruth. If you are being inauthentic, so that you are not triggering others, or if you're working in an inauthentic path where you have to tether or hide your light, man, let that shit go. Let it shine, speak your truth, and whatever you shake loose, whatever falls away from you, was not meant for you to begin with, because you will never have to compromise your values or tether your light or not let your light shine for anything that is meant for you. You are out of alignment. And I have been out of alignment, and I was out of alignment, and I was afraid to share this stuff because I'm surrounded by super religious people. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the realization hits you, man, when are we going to start? I know that from what I've seen, that there are huge changes on the world stage coming, and that truly what I'm doing here right now is just getting warmed up. And I'm hoping this reaches the right people, because that's how social media works. I'm counting on that, is that the algorithm will reach the right people, and this will encourage them and uplift them. And perhaps they can draw upon parallels. And also that these pointers now that I'm giving, these obstacles that I've encountered, that this can help them, is that, hey, this isn't about money or fame. That's the other thing, is on this spiritual path of evolution and development, these higher dimensional beings will enter your thought stream and try to influence you and think, well, how are you going to make money teaching this? We didn't come here to make money. We didn't come here to make money. We didn't come here to chase fame, drugs, poison, good looks, none of that. We didn't come here for none of that. We came here to make a difference, service towards others. And if that fundamental step isn't in place, if I'm not finding ways to be of service of others, all this other spiritual work is in vain. I've seen people on YouTube with huge followings who claim to be avatars and cities and ascended masters, who don't so much as crack a smile in any of your videos. I'm like, how can you be enlightened? You're going to tell me you, and you're not even laughing or cracking a joke. It's all serious and grim, and it's all done in a vain attempt to promote me and promote this, or, And so that's one thing I want to get across here. This isn't about me. This is about us. This is about humanity. There are no others. And just because someone is even more evolved does not make them any more special. Now, what I will say is that as my utility increases, as my vibration increases, that dark or life circumstances will come along to test you or to derail you, but we have to keep pressing forward. And eventually what I understood is that ultimately I'm operating on a 24-hour cycle. And Maya, some days, the self-limiting power of illusion kicks our butt. But we got to get up, we got to do it again. And so I kind of touched on this. The other one is spiritual extremes, one of the other traps. Kind of touched on this, but I want to underscore it as its own thing, is spiritual extremes of either renounce this world, go live in a cave, seek enlightenment, and don't participate in the awakening, or don't develop ourselves at all, do nothing but karma yoga, nothing but action, nothing but trying to participate, and then we are lacking evolution. Truly, the biggest service you can provide to the world is your enlightenment. Your awakening is the best thing you can do, because it affects the collective, and you're able to serve from a higher level. However, eventually you got to start serving. So you can't go to either extreme of nothing but action, 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 because you're going to spin your tires. I did. You're going to spin your tires, and what? You make some money, you get some followers. You know what I mean? The dark side has billions of followers, and they don't even know they're following the dark side. So that encourages you to cultivate some discernment, that I'm going towards the path of light, but I have to avoid spiritual extremes, the middle path, the middle pillar, going up and down all the way, being that the Sushumna channel, that when I balance polarity and when I avoid spiritual extremes and I incorporate new changes, pushing the ego into the unknown, out of my comfort zone, because yes, I would love to spend hours a day doing breath work, cold exposure, yoga, weightlifting, all this stuff. But at the end of the day, that's a very negative oriented outlook. And so I wish I would have avoided spiritual extremes. I'm just finding the middle path. And if you've encountered any of these and you'd like to share or you'd like to hear more, leave me something in the comments. And also, if I've gotten you this far, you are my friend and I love you. But what I'll say is, do be sure to hit that subscribe, hit that like button. Be sure to follow, hit the bell notifications. Doing this hopefully to be of service. So if there's anything else you'd like to hear on, let me know. Final trap is and I've written a book on this, ironically, but I wouldn't promote that book extensively at this point, which is the 108 supernatural abilities that we can cultivate through yoga, that other yogis have attained, that Christ has attained, ascended masters have attained some of them, but they're 108 classical cities. But what I'll say is the seeking of spiritual power, the seeking of wanting to feel good, this are actually impurities and need to be avoided. I had even reached a point where there were higher dimensional beings doing things for me in the physical realm to gaslight me into believing that it was me. I was acting out of my divinity, when in fact I was being manipulated by the false light once again. And so discernment is necessary. Two things that block us from our source is the desire for power, the desire for wealth, desire for spiritual abilities, and the desire or need to feel good. There's no beating the system. There can be no increase in consciousness to feel good unless we have increased our threshold for discomfort and walking in our discomfort zone or walking out of our comfort zone and into growth. And that is actually how we walk the balanced middle path, is by neutralizing our likes and dislikes. Anyways, I've gone on much longer than I have expected, and I totally went off script. I don't even know if I'll edit this. I'll probably just keep this unedited, but I'm hoping, man, that you all are just loving, despite all the horrible stuff on in the news, that awakening is here, man. There's no stopping what's coming. There's no stopping me. I know that I'm aligned with truth, aligned with the one, and that I'm just getting warmed up with this content, but it will become more of a regular thing, and it's more, I'm hoping to tune in to what the collective is dealing with, because I've been out of tune. I've spent 5 years developing myself with the most advanced forms of Kundalini yoga with practitioners from India who all agree, man, this is the source of lasting fulfillment. And that's what the last thing I'd like to say is that I was addicted to drugs and alcohol for years. Eastern spiritual wisdom saved my life. This spiritual awakening that I didn't even deserve, that I was graced with, totally saved my life, set me on this path that I'm on now. Now I know I signed up for this. It's all a dream. We all exist on a higher level of reality. What we do matters, though, and that we are all one. So, hey, if you followed me this far, I love you. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful day. Much love.